Hello friends, I am Parthapratim Chakraborty from Department of Geology, University of Delhi. Today in this module we will be discussing the deep marine environments. Once we go through this module, you will be able to know what are the different parts of deep marine environments and what are the processes that operate in this deep marine environment and the kind of assimilation of these processes which control the entire deep marine environment. You will also be able to understand that what are the different parts of a submarine fan, what are the processes operate in the different parts of the submarine fan, and what are the likely products of that. Once you know all these things, then you will be able to comprehend that what kind of succession we will expect when we will see the product of a deep marine environment in the ancient rock record. So, it will help you in understanding the product of deep marine environment in the ancient rock record once you know the modern deep marine environments and the processes that operate in the modern environments. Now, to discuss all these things in detail, that what are the different parts, what are the processes, what they operate and how they operate, we need to have a in-depth knowledge, and for that in-depth knowledge we move to the classroom to discuss about all these things in detail. So friends, we were discussing the deep marine environment. As I have already discussed with you that what is a deep marine environment. Overall, the marine environment, they are classified into two, that is shallow marine and deep marine. And where is the boundary between the two? Commonly we consider it is the shell break, that is the boundary between the two. So oceanic side of the shell break, that we normally consider that it is a deep marine environment. Now, it basically includes two major environments. One is the continental slope part and the abyssal part. Now, these two environments that come under the domain of the deep marine environment. Now, what are the different processes that operate in this deep marine environment? Overall, the deep marine environment, if we see, it is one of the most vast area of the Earth's crust. But what happens in this deep marine environment? That the sedimentation rate is very slow. So, as the sedimentation rate is very slow, so the total amount of sediment that represent the deep marine environment, that is not very big amount, though it represents a very large area of the earth crust. Now, we come on to that what are the different processes that operate in the deep marine environment. Principally, the processes that operate in the deep marine environment, we can classify that number one, it is the suspension fallout. Then number two, it is the orthogenic deposition. And number three, which is a little subordinate to these two, that is the coarse grained sediment gravity flow deposits. Coarse grained sediment gravity flow. So, all these are part of the deep marine environment. And now we will discuss one by one what are these processes, what are the products of that. Now, suspension fallout is the suspension settlement of fine-grained particles which remain in suspension within the water column over a large or long period of time. And this suspension sediment that includes the terrigenous material that is supplied from land. It also includes the material which is borne by the air and that is supplied into the ocean. We also get some biogenic material that basically is the biopopulation and the fragments of the bioclass in a very fine fraction, and also it may include some kind of cosmogenic dust that may be supplied into the marine basin. So, all these things, as they are very fine grained and they are settling for a long period of time, that basically represent this suspension fallout. We divide this suspension fallout into two basic types, that is pelagic and hemipelagic. I will come on to this detail of pelagic and hemipelagic later on. Now, come on to the orthogenic deposition. It is basically the chemical precipitation from the ocean water column, that what you call the orthogenic deposition. It may be calcareous, it may be siliceous, and they are basically deposited by chemical precipitation within the water column that we call the orthogenic deposition. These two are essentially the finer grain, but within this finer grain ambit we also get some amount of coarse grain supply. This coarse grain supply is essentially in the form of different kind of mass flows such as debris flow, grain flow, turbidity current, and all these kinds of flows that come from the slope region and then get deposited either at the base of the slope or in the deeper part of the basin, even up to the distal part of the basin in the form of very thin bedded turbidite units. Now, this rate of suspension fallout and orthogenic deposition, that is very slow, but the rate of sediment gravity flow and the sedimentation rate of deposition of the coarse grain sediment gravity flow deposits, that is really fast. So, overall this is a domain where over a large long time there is a slow sedimentation grow on, but in some small time interval within this large time span there may be some deposition of the coarse grain material within this fine grain domain. Now, I come on to a little bit more discussion about all these different components of this deep marine system. Now, coming on to first suspension fallout, as I discussed that the suspension fallout is essentially the suspension settlement in the form of a rain of sediment over a long period of time. Now, what it really constitutes, we also discussed it constitutes the terrigenous material, the biogenic material, and also that some kind of cosmogenic dust that may be present within that in the form of some tufaceous material. If there is any volcano, that volcanic ash also can be settled in the form of the suspension settlement within the ocean basin within the ancient succession or marine succession we get at the subaqueous tooth layer. Now, this suspension fallout deposit, they are broadly divided into two types as I have discussed, that is the pelagic and hemipelagic. Now, what is pelagic sediments? Pelagic sediments is that where you have the very fine grained sediment grains mostly in the sand, silt, grade, and which may be calcareous or the biogenic ooze. We divide it into a calcareous and siliceous sediment clay or it is a biogenic ooze. And commonly what we get that here the biogenic component is less than 30%. Now, when we get the calcareous and the siliceous ooze, we get either the calcareous or the siliceous depending on the composition of it, and these are either the clays, it may be red clay, it can be black clay or it can be grey clay. If we have the red clay, then the components of the red clay, that is the quartz, feldspar, kaolinite, chlorite, these are the common components of the red clay with very little amount of organic carbon. Whereas the black clay, we get the large amount of organic carbon, about 1 to 15% of organic carbon, which normally get deposited in an anoxic environment with large amount of organic material supply. In the grey clay, what we get, it is an intermediate between red clay and the black clay, where the intermediate amount of organic matter that may be present. Now, coming on to the biogenic ooze, where the biogenic component that is significantly high, that is more than about 30% when the biogenic component that is there, then we call it a biogenic ooze. Now, biogenic ooze, it can be either calcareous or it can be siliceous. Now, when we have the calcareous, that the calcareous, there may be the calcareous component, that is the calcium carbonate test that basically constitute the biogenic component, then when the calcareous biogenic ooze. And that commonly is deposited in a warm water and in a shallow sea above the CCD, that is the carbonate compensation depth. This commonly is represented by coccolithophores and the foraminifera. So, we commonly will expect the calcareous ooze that is in the shallow part, that is the warm sea within the photic zone, commonly represented by coccolithophores and the foraminifera. And what about the siliceous? They normally prefer the cold, that is the polar region, that is the cold climate. And also it is represented by siliceous organisms such as diatoms, foraminifers. And that kind of material which has a siliceous taste, that basically get accumulated to form the siliceous kind of clay. When in the deep basin a large amount of siliceous material that get concentrated, then we normally get the deep marine chert. And this is commonly possible when we have a upwelling and the nutrient supply that will encourage the kind of the siliceous organism growth within the basin. Now, this is basically what we have talked about the pelagic sediments. Now, we come on to the hemipelagic sediment. Hemipelagic sediment is that where we have the fine grained portions, that the silty and the clayey portion, that is not more than 25%. And this is we commonly find when we have a storm related plume, or you get some distal turbidite unit that is supplying the terrigenous material within it. The hemipelagic sediment, that is more proximal than the pelagic sediment, and we get the it may be represented by the terrigenous as well as the bioclastic, fine grained bioclastic material. It is only the percentage of the bioclast that you get that differentiate the pelagic and the hemipelagic. Now, we come on to the orthogenic deposition. Now, this orthogenic deposition also plays a major role. It essentially represents the chemical precipitation from the water column. Now, what are the product of that chemical precipitation? Is the aragonite crystals that you may get. You may also get the calcium carbonate. You get ferromanganese nodules. You also get the phosphorite. So, we get the aragonitic carbonate. We get the ferromanganese nodule, or we get the phosphorite, or are basically the product of orthogenic sedimentation. Now, where I get the aragonitic precipitation carbonate? Where the terrigenous supply is very low. So, all the favorable conditions of carbonate that should be there should be availability of light, there should be availability of nutrient, that is the primary producer, there should be the very low supply of terrigenous, and it should be a shallow sea condition where I should get the orthogenic precipitation of the carbonate. For ferromanganese nodules also we require very low sedimentation rate, and these are commonly made up of iron, manganese, cobalt, nickel, copper. And these ferromanganese nodules and ferromanganese crust, which occupies a major part of the ocean basin in different parts, that basically represent that areas are of low sedimentation, low terrigenous supply, and that encourages the chemical precipitation of the ferromanganese nodule. The phosphorite are those where we get the P2O5 content that is more than 12.5%. That what we call the phosphorite deposits. And these are basically the recrystallization of unoxidized phosphorite. So, unoxidized phosphorite, when it is recrystallized, then you get a phosphorite deposit, which again is a product that where the seawater it undergoes the upwelling and the deep marine nutrient come to the shallow marine, and thereby it encourages the large scale productivity and the phosphorite deposition. So, all these things they basically together constitute the deep marine orthogenic sedimentation, and that causes the major part of the history of the deep marine sedimentation history. So, I have discussed with you the product of the suspension fallout, I discussed with you the orthogenic sedimentation, what are the products of that. Now, let me concentrate on the coarse grain material that is we get in the deep marine system. Where from this coarse grain material come? This coarse grain material essentially come from the slope part through the canyons. And when this coarse grain material is supplied in the deep ocean, it normally gets supplied when the shell width becomes low and the sedimentation rate becomes high, which we commonly find in case of the sea level regression or the sea level low stand. At that time, the river system encroaches onto the shelf, and thereby it supplies the sediment up to the shelf break, and that sediment is further supplied to the deep basin. However, it does not mean that we cannot get the deep marine sedimentation during the high of the sea level. We can have the deep marine sediment supply even at the high of the sea level if a delta is formed, and delta progrades up to the shelf break, and that sediment can also be supplied. So we can get that the supply of the sediment in the deep basin, it can be both in the sea level low stand and sea level high stand, though possibility of the low stand supply is much more than the high stand supply. Now, what are the different units that we get? We get the different kind of units in the deep basin, that we get the debris flow deposit, then we get the turbidites. This figure illustrates the typical product of a turbidity current, and as you know that turbidity current requires a water column to be present to generate the turbidity current. So, this slope region is a very good for the generation of the turbidity current, and this is a typical product of a turbidity current, what we know as a Boma cycle. And the Boma cycle, it has a massive part, then the upper stage plane bed part, then the climbing ripple lamination, then the laminated bed and homogeneous mud. So this is a normal grading, that is a typical character of a turbidite, that any turbidite that should show us the normal grading, and this is the typical Boma cycle what we expect in a turbidite deposit. We get liquefied or fluidized flow. So all these are the products that we get. Particularly if we come to the slope part, that is the most physiographically and the slope wise unstable part. So any kind of tectonic jerk, that is the seismic jerk or tectonic jerk or the continuous wave pumping, that will make the material in the proximal part or the upper part of the slope unstable. And the material which is basically destabilized from the slope part, that comes in the form of slide. Slide is essentially a dislocated material, but there is no internal rotation within the slide. So material which has a detachment plane, and that material that if it is moves, then we call it a slide. If I draw a diagram something like this, that a material that is there, that I can say A, B, C, and then you have a slide like this. So this material that is supplied here as a B, C. So this is basically detached and has come here, but there is no change in the order of superposition of the material, then I call it as a slide. Whereas this slide in the downslope part, it changes into slump. Then what is a slump? That if I have A, B, C, this, and then you have a detachment plane, and in case of slump, the material that will be like this, that it is A, B, C, that there is an internal rotation within the material, then you call it a slump. So in a slope, what will happen, that a slide that will turn into a slump, and finally when it will go further down with the admixture of the basin water, that will transform to a debris flow. So all these transitions from the slide to slump to the debris flow, that basically we get on a slope. We also get a large number of soft sediment deformation in the distal part or the lower part of the slope, which clearly shows the instability within the system. What I have talked with you about the different kind of components of the deep marine sedimentation, this figure actually illustrates that. You can see there are sediments which are coming from the coarse grain material in the different kind of mass flow, that will be coming from the slope and the shell break part, beyond the shell break, and then you get this deposition, which is the suspension settlement and the orthogenic sedimentation, that will be occurring either as a suspension fallout or as a chemical precipitation from the water column. So all the different processes that is being shown in this diagram. Now once the sediment that is supplied here, that get deposited at the base of slope, and the sediment when it is deposited at the base of slope in the form of a fan, that what we refer to as the submarine fan. A submarine fan is almost similar to like of a delta, and if I draw a submarine fan system, so there are different parts of a submarine fan. We can see this is what is called the inner fan part, and mind, this whole thing is developing at the base of continental slope, and I am drawing a plan view of a fan. So there is an inner fan part which essentially is represented by a channel levee system. Channel levee system. It can be an incised channel or it can be a normal channel levy system. The channels can be meandering, and the degree of meandering can be widely variable depending on the grain size what is there in the channel, the available grain size. Now, so there will be a channel, and this part that will be levy, and this channel levy part that we call the inner fan part. Then this single channel, that is the single feeder system, that get distributed a number of distributary channel, and each channel finally divulges its sediment in the form of depositional lobe. So this is what is called the depositional lobe, and the entire portion, that is the distributary channel and depositional lobe part, we call it a mid fan part. And the fine grained turbidites, that what we get, that is the distal part which basically is alternates with the normal basin sediment, then that we call the outer fan part. So what will be the deposit of this different part? If I come to the inner fan part, it is a channel levy system. This channel levies that people have described from these channels about the 170 meter thick succession of amalgamated sandstone, the coarse grain or the fine grain depending upon the grain size available, and that kind of amalgamated sandstone people have described from this channel levy system of the inner fan part. In the middle fan part, it is the lobe, that is the proximal turbidites that we get the most, and a little bit of channel sediments and the frontal splays. Those are the most deposits of the mid fan part. Whereas the distal fan part, these are the distal turbidites that what we get. So if I come to the turbidites, then the concept of the Boma cycles that always come. And as you know, in the Boma cycles there are the different subdivisions, that is the A, B, C, D and E. And A is the massive, and the B is the upper stage plain bed, the C, that is the superimposed ripple cross stratification, and the D, that is the fine sand and laminated silt, and E is the homogeneous mud. So all these subdivisions that we can get when a turbidite, that is the medium grain, that is the medium sand to shell. But if I have a coarser grain or if I get a finer grain, then all these subdivisions we may not expect. So in the distal turbidites, what we expect, that the distal turbidites will be Boma D to E, sometimes it may be Boma C to D to E. Whereas the proximal turbidites, what we expect in the mid fan part, that will be the Boma A or Boma AB. So all these, they are basically, essentially, if you see a submarine fan, the entire history of the submarine fan from its proximal to the distal part, it is nothing but a history of the different kind of mass flows and their evolution from the initially it is a by channelized flow, then it is a non-channelized, and the formation of the lobes. Now depending on some factors such as the source of this fan, whether it is a point source or a line source, the type of sediment that is available, it is a gravelly sediment, sandy sediment, muddy sediment, that the basin relief, that is the bathymetry of the basin, as well as the sea level, that is the sea level is still stand or it is rising or the falling, that the fans, they may be of different geometry and different grain size. Accordingly, we get a fan which may be gravelly, it may be sandy, and it may be muddy. Gravelly submarine fans, they are very restrictive in occurrence, and they will be occupied by shallow channels and a large amount of the mass movement, that is the mass flow deposits. Sandy, they will be more radial, and their channels will be more levied, but the channel will be quickly abandoned and there will be relocation of the channel that we will get. And the most extensive is the muddy one, which we also refer to as the elongated fan, and that is basically spreaded over a large area, and the spreading of the large area, it may be in the tune of 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 6 square kilometer area. Whereas the gravelly fan you may get in the 10 to 100 square kilometer area, not more than that. Now coming on to the type of succession that we expect in a submarine fan. Commonly a submarine fan, it progrades into the basin, so we will get a coarsening upward succession in a submarine fan. So, what we expect in a coarsening upward succession? That the distal fan, the fine grained turbidites, the pelagic sediments, the alteration of pelagic sediment, that is overlain by the mid fan, and the mid fan part, that is represented by the lobe and sometimes the some shallow channels, and that finally will be overlain by the inner fan part, that is basically the channel levy succession, and overall the succession is a coarsening upward. The product of the pelagic and hemipelagic sediment, they are very fine grained, silty, clayey, shelly, and we do not expect any kind of succession pattern in the pelagic on these sediments. Only at the base of the slope, sometimes we get the olistrostomes. What is olistostome? Olistostome are the rootless boulders of heterogeneous material that is within a chaotic mass. The individual blocks within this olistostome, they are called olistolith, and that is very common when you get some sediments at the base of the slope which is very destabilized, and that is also a product of found in some areas at the base of the slope. So, completely this whole succession, that is the suspension settlement, the orthogenic sediments, the coarse grained material in the form of submarine fan, in the form of slide, the slump, the slope product and the deep basin product, this together, that constitutes the deep marine environment. I believe that this discussion on the deep marine environment you people have enjoyed, and you understood the importance of these deep marine environments, their processes, their products, and how they are and what are their identifying criteria in detail. Thank you.